Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today bought his first rental property 5 years ago with $10,000 and now owns 75 rental units. He was able to quit his job last year and has been traveling the country ever since. Chris Heeren joins us today. Chris, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Hey, Seth. It's a pleasure to be here.
No, pleasure is all mine. And I didn't mention in the intro, you are a disc golfer, a champion, state champion, I think, right?
I am. I have a 7-time Wisconsin state champion disc golfer. I'm sponsored by Discraft, and I love to play. So I play tournaments most weekends during the summer.
That's awesome. And now that you're not working in a regular job, you'll have more time to practice, right?
Well, that's the plan. So, I was able to leave last year, and I spent a lot of that time doing some traveling that was well postponed. Yeah. And this year, I'm trying to get back into the mix. And actually, next year, I turned 40 years old, and I'm able to play the Masters division, which is the old guys division. So, I'm looking forward to getting back into shape, getting back to the top of my game, and traveling the country playing.
That's awesome. And I was mentioning to you before we started recording that I think you're the first disc golfer we've had. We've had lots of hockey players, pro baseball players, but first time somebody's actually said that they are a disc golfer. So that's awesome.
Well, I'm glad to add that to the list.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I always find it's interesting because I find the sports people do really well in real estate. There's just something about it. Maybe it's the competitive nature, but everybody who has a sports background seems to just crush it.
Well, I know personally I'm a very competitive person, and so I almost look at it as a game. I want to see what I can get done out there, what I can fully do, and what I can accomplish.
Yeah, no, for sure. So let's get into your real estate goals. What are your current goals right now?
That's a good question. So a couple of years ago, my answers are always different. There would be bigger and better numbers. And so now that I achieved my financial freedom number, and I was able to do some traveling, I'm really trying to take a step back here for a minute and figure out what my goals are. I'm specializing in single-family houses and duplexes. I've never gotten in the apartment complex world. However, now that I'm focused more on traveling and disc golf, I don't necessarily want to have 10 rehabs going at all times. So I'm actually just in the transition to starting to look at the smaller multifamily area, 16, 32 units, somewhere in that range. And I hope my goal by the end of this year is to pick one of those guys up.
Yeah, no, that's great. And so you mentioned you're just trying to figure out where you want to go with your business. Are you trying, how do you even make that happen in your mind? Like, what sort of things are you visualizing, or how do you even frame that into perspective?
Well, it's a lot of asking the question why and what do you actually want? So at first glance, at first step, it feels like, okay, I want 100 units. I want 200 units. Once you get there, you want 300. You just want more. Yeah. And so I have to take a step back and figure out what else is important in my life. And so I've been asking questions of, okay, where do I fit my family in? Where do I fit my hobbies in? Where do I fit my traveling and just other things that I want to build rather than just real estate? So, and the problem is I love real estate. So if I had the time, I would just do it nonstop. And that's obviously what I've done in the past. Yeah. And so that's where my goals are shifting a little bit more this year to, okay, how can I keep increasing the units, but maybe not necessarily increase my workload. So that's where obviously the next natural step is apartment complexes versus single family houses.
Yeah, that time freedom kind of thing comes in, right?
Yeah. So the biggest number I refer to in life is not return on investment, but return on time. Where's my time best spent?
Yeah. And so when you first started 5 years ago, was financial freedom that kind of end goal you were aiming towards, or did that not even factor in?
That was the big goal. So I was working a typical 8 to 5. Well, it was more like 50 to 60 hours a week, a job, just in a cubicle. And I'd look around me and I'd see people who are 60 years old doing the exact same job as me, sitting in that same cube every single day. And that drove me insane. Naturally, I like to be outside, and I don't know how I found myself at a desk job. But luckily, that gave me the drive to research all of this and figure out how can I get out of that job? How can I have money work for me?
Yeah. And lots of our listeners and viewers, they have a handful of properties and they're always looking to scale. So did you think that you'd hit your financial freedom goal by year 5, or did you think it was going to be a lot longer?
Well, your plans always change as you go along. Obviously, I picked up the book Rich Dad Poor Dad. That's kind of what started it all for me. And after reading that, I'm like, this is a genius. I want to buy my first house within the next 2 years, and maybe I'll buy one house a year from there on out. And in 20 years, I can retire happily. I lucky early on, I did everything right. I bought the right properties. I bought the right prices. I had the right rent ratios. And that very first property I bought, I paid $50,000 for a duplex that rented out for $600 per side, $1,200 a month.
Nice.
And it appraised at $80,000 the day I bought it. So what I was able to do unknowingly was banks are willing to refinance 80% of that appraisal value. And so I had my $10,000. I put that as a down payment in there. And 3 months later, I was able to refinance, pull all my money back out, still had the duplex, and I could go on to my next property. And I kind of snowballed from there. So after I learned that process of, hey, this is possible to get your capital back out fairly quickly, I then started learning about private investor funding and how I can actually purchase the deals all cash using other investors' money, fixing them up, and then refinancing all that money back out into a bank loan and just going from there. And within my first year, I started buying 2 houses every single month.
Nice. So as you're getting that that quantity of properties, did you ever hit any plateaus as you were growing where you had to change your systems or change your thinking?
Well, so I bought a duplex and a triplex fairly quickly. I did the rehabs myself, and this is with, keep in mind, a full-time job, 2 kids, and playing disc golf on the weekends. So it was a lot of late nights, and it took a while. That first year was basically me learning how to do the whole process. And what I was trying to do was just figure out, I didn't know how to do anything. I was not a rehabber by trade. I didn't know how to swing a hammer. So I was the YouTube king when I first started.
Yeah.
And so I kind of learned how to do things myself just so I know what it took and what properties needed. And once I got those first couple units out of the way, I handed everything over to a contractor. I handed management over to a property management company. And that allowed me to free up my time to actually go find more deals so I could spend my time buying the properties rather than fixing one up at a time. And so right away when I did that, I started buying 2 houses a month within probably my first year and a half. And that's kind of where I plateaued ever since. I haven't had the need to scale up. I was able to do everything else I wanted to do in my life without creating a monster business. My main goal was I didn't want to bring on employees. I didn't want to be responsible for other people. I wanted to ultimately be able to have my property manager manage them, my contractors do the work, and then I could focus on other things in my life. So I guess scaling up, I mean, it's tempting. I always see bigger and better ways on how I can hire additional people to come in and make this bigger. But ultimately, I have what I already want right now. I got that financial freedom number, and now I want to simplify my life. So it's keeping it small, not having employees, and growing substantially 2 houses at a time. And ideally, that's where I'm switching my game plan up this year and starting to look into large apartment complexes.
Yeah. And I think you make a really good point because you've basically built the business with your end goal and what you want in mind. And, lots of people, they build these mammoth operations, but they don't really realize what they're working towards. But with yourself, you knew that you didn't want to bring on employees, keep it nice and simple, and you were able to achieve what you wanted to. And now you're just going to, do a rebrand or revamp things and move into that smaller multifamily space. I think that's great.
Right. And again, it didn't start out that way. It's constantly evolving. When I started out, I wanted to grow bigger and faster. And that's how I got to where I was buying 2 properties a month. Mm-hmm. But as you get to those points, that's where I kept asking myself, what is the most important? And that's where I've been able to keep it at that pace and not necessarily keep growing and growing. And just, I've heard podcasts of other people who they start the same way. And all of a sudden now they have 1,000 units and they have this monster business and they're working nonstop. I'm like, well, you got what you wanted. Why are you working so hard? Now, coming from the aspect, I'm very passionate about what I do. I can see how people get into that, I don't want to say trap, but in that zone where you just keep going and going and going. Yeah. But I've learned hard way before in the past. I've ended up going through a divorce 2 years ago or so. And it's just, I want to focus on my life now and not just going all in at one thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. So have you developed any, routines or rituals that have helped keep you focused as you're growing your business?
Well, I'm luckily very internally driven. And so one of the biggest things that's helped me is creating a score sheet. And so there's a lot of things I want to do on a daily basis. And so what's tricky is I have a daily checklist. Every Sunday night, I sit down, write out all the things I want to accomplish for the week per day. And those are individual tasks that come up one at a time. There's always these reoccurring tasks I never could figure out. Like I want to work out every day. I want to meditate. I want to make sure I drink 72 ounces of water a day. All these things that reoccur that never made it on my to-do list because I'd fill it all up. And so what I've just started doing this year, which I think has worked amazing, is create a little scorecard. So I have my little scorecard here that lists like the 15, 20 things I want to consistently do. And that's just like making sure I get at my affirmations and making sure I read for 30 minutes a day. And I put a little number next to it, like 2, 3, or 4. It's just points. So every time at the end of the day, I go through my checklist, I check off what I've done that day, and I can look at my sheet and like, well, you know what? I didn't get my 30 minutes of reading it today. Maybe I should do that rather than just sit down and look for more houses here.
Yeah.
And so by doing that, I'm trying to get that number since I'm internally driven. I might get numbers high as I can. So I'm pushing myself to make sure I'm doing these things that are going to get done. And it's worked great.
That's a really good idea. Do you have like this activity is a par 3 or something, or par 4, and then you're trying to get a birdie?
No, but I do have disc golf on there. So I do have a practice run on there. So since I started doing real estate, my practice has drastically dropped off. My game's been going downhill. So I want to get back into it again. So I'm making sure disc golf has a few things on there, a couple hundred putts every day. And I'm getting those pretty high numbers right now because that's one of my higher focuses.
Oh, that's awesome. And you mentioned your affirmations. What impact has doing affirmations had on you?
I mean, for one, it gives you more self-confidence, but it gives you what you're focused on. So first of all, it makes you sit down and think, what do you want out of life? Where do you want to be? Where do you want to get to? And then secondly, if you start visualizing that and saying those over and over, it really puts you in the right perspective. And I mean, ideally what you want to do is you want to feel like you've already accomplished what you're trying to set out to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, how long have you been doing those? Is it relatively recently, or has it been a while?
Those are relatively recently. I would say just starting within 2019 or so.
Okay. Yeah. It's always interesting because a lot of people swear by doing the affirmations, and for, a listener out there who might not be doing them, it makes a big impact.
Well, I think the biggest change in my entire life has been meditation. I know that sounds crazy because I've heard this over and over for years.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was some crazy thing that I don't know, wasn't for me. And I've led a pretty stressful life up until probably within the last year or so. But once I started doing this, it's like the stress levels have just decreased dramatically. And now that's one of the things I look forward to the most every day is just doing 10 minutes of meditation.
Yeah, no, you mentioned you went through that divorce too. Like, I know from, I feel your pain having gone through it myself. It can really throw a big ratchet in your mindset and how you feel, right?
Well, I mean, luckily ours was very, very amicable. It occurred just because we sat down and tried to figure out what we wanted in our life. I mean, here I am busting my butt trying to do real estate so I can go out and travel for the rest of my life. And she was a homebody and didn't want to leave. And so I didn't want to travel the world by myself. And so it was amicable. It wasn't nearly as bad as others, but it still makes you think, okay, what do you want out of your life? Who are you looking for? What do you want out of someone? And just to focus on that.
Oh, for sure. And that goes into business partners too. Lots of people end up partnering up with somebody. You have to make sure you are on the same path and want the same goals, right?
Yep. And I also had a business partner as well that picked on during the divorce. So that way the properties we bought weren't commingled in with the divorce itself. And so that's been a fun year and a half. And so that's actually finally all, we just sold our last flip for property in that, sorry, I just scratched that. But we just sold that. The last flip in that. What the hell? I'm sorry, I can't. I'm drawing a blank here. Anyways.
Oh no.
I had a partner and it didn't go that well either. So we finally got through the partnership and that's over as well too. So things are looking pretty blue sky from here on out.
No, for sure. So let's talk about a Keystone deal. So a deal that made a big impact on you and your business. Is there one that comes to mind?
So I saw this question ahead of time. And I have to say, I've done a lot of deals. And when I say a lot, well, probably about 70 to 80. I don't have any major wins. I don't have many major losses. I have an awful lot of base hits to doubles. Yeah. And so basically what I consider a base hit to double is a property that I can find that's enough equity that after I rehab it, I can put a mortgage on it and the mortgage covers my all-in costs. Therefore, I have a house with no money out of my pocket. And that is my main strategy from the get-go. So a simple 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. If you want some numbers, I can do one I just literally bought yesterday. So
sure,
$15,000. It's a 4-bedroom. It's a 4-bedroom, 1-bathroom house that was an old duplex that needs to be converted back to a single family. However, it's almost there. We just have to remove a kitchen, do some paint, some flooring, and this will take probably about $13,000 of rehab to get there. So I'll be all in for $30,000 in this property. It will rent out for $850. And it should appraise for about $60,000. So I'm going to go back and I'm going to put a $40,000 mortgage on the property, which if I'm all in for 30, I put a $40,000 mortgage on it. That's $10,000 cash in my pocket. That's tax free. And I have a couple of rules that I abide by when I buy my properties. Obviously, the first rule is 70% of ARV minus repair costs, similar to what a flipper would do. So that way I get my equity instead of a down payment. And then the second rule is what I call the 2% rule. For other people, that's basically the purchase price should be 50 times the rent. And so if a house is going to rent out for $800 a month, I'm looking to be all in for $40,000 or less. And so my rule is don't put a mortgage over that 50 times rent ratio. So this one's going to be a win all the way around. It should hit that 50 or that 2% rule. It's going to give me $10,000 in my pocket, and we'll just move on forward with the next property. Yeah. Now, let's see. The last deal I did, here's a simple one. I just bought a 5-bedroom house a couple of months ago, right off the MLS. And this is for $35,000. This is a deal that anyone could have grabbed out there. And for those people who are thinking this is like in Chicago or Milwaukee, I don't buy in D-class areas. I do buy in C-class. So these are 100-year-old properties. Mm-hmm. They're in low income, but it's not like you're going to get shot out there. So they're typical. The typical average person makes $40,000 a year. And so it's not quite enough to really qualify for a house, but they still need a place to live. And rents are surprisingly $800 for a 3-bedroom, $950 for a 4-bedroom, and the rents are right where you want them to be. Mm-hmm. So this is where I buy all my properties. I focus in one area that I can know very well rather than be spread out through many different areas. And completely lost my train of thought.
Oh, no, actually, this is a good tangent because, do you have a set of criteria that you look for with every home? Like you mentioned the 2% rule, but do you say, what's your bread and butter? Do you specifically go after, let's say, 4-bedroom, 2-bath homes in a specific area, or how do you even qualify properties before you offer on them?
Well, again, qualifying the properties, the real quick, easier ratio is that 2% rule. Yeah. So if it's going to rent out for $800, am I able to get into it for $40,000? And now as the markets are changing, these deals really don't exist anymore on the MLS in the area. However, I do a lot of direct marketing. I check Craigslist. I've bought some off of Zillow, just sheriff sale auctions. So you have means to buy them off market. When you're trying to compete with everyone else, right now the markets are very hot. You're not going to get a deal. You're not going to get that additional equity in there. But if you get them off market, you're going to have better options here. So I'm typically looking for, like I said before, that 3-bedroom, 1-bathroom house, 100-year-old house. It's typically going to rent out for $850. I'm looking to buy it for probably $25 to $35. Put $10,000 into it. Be all in for $45,000. Get that, and I'm using private money lenders. So what I do is I just go, I know my old boss and a couple of coworkers had some extra cash, so I give them 10%. And these are short-term notes that are for 3 to 4 months. And once I refinance out, they get paid back off.
Yeah.
And so I'm looking for properties in towns that have 30,000 or more for population. I mean, I live in Wisconsin, so the towns here, the cities aren't very big. Madison is the closest Madison where I live to, or the closest city where I live to, and that's 160,000. So
yeah.
I don't want to go with these towns that are 5,000 people. But at the same time, I'm not looking to go into some crazy metro area with 1 million population.
Yeah, for sure. And you brought up just the state of the current, where we are in the market cycle. The deals are few and far between. So how the market has changed over the past 5 years? Because, 5 years ago, it was a lot easier to find a good deal. How have you had to change your business? Like you mentioned, you go direct to seller a lot now. But what other changes have you had to make to kind of keep up with the market?
Yeah, so obviously when I first started, I was buying stuff off the MLS, kind of like newbies do. As I graduated into doing off-market deals, the prices got better, but the deals have been far and fewer between. Well, now we're to the point where we are definitely, we're at closer to the top of the market than ever before. So I'm analyzing my properties on which ones I should start selling. My game plan was to never sell a property. And so now I'm actually, just in the next 2 months here, I'm putting 3 or 4 in the market just to get some extra capital for the next downturn. Price points, what I'm doing, what I'm analyzing right now is my return on equity. So it's not necessarily if they're cash flowing or how well they're going to do in a downturn market, but I'm looking at, okay, what do I have in there right now? What's my equity and what's my current cash flow? I could care less if it's cash flowing great. But if there's $50,000 of equity in this property and it's only cash flowing $100 a month, you're getting a return of investment of less than 5% on that. So either I need to refinance or I need to sell it. And so in
Yeah.
some cases, if these houses now that I was buying for $40,000 and we're worth 60, now they're worth $100,000. It doesn't make sense for me to put an $80,000 mortgage on this house. Now my rent ratios don't meet what I want. So therefore, in order to capture that equity, I'm going to have to sell. And it's kind of sad. It's hard. They're my babies, but I've sold 4 or 5 already. I have 4 or 5 more that I'm putting in the market here. And I'm just trying to make sure that we're set for the next downturn. Because I mean, I think as renters, there's always going to need to have renters out there.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm really glad you brought up that return on equity, because I think that's something that a lot of people first getting into real estate investing, they miss because they're just focused on the cash flow. So, is that something that you picked up through experience, or how did you get introduced to that return on equity?
I love numbers, so I'm constantly trying to figure out what's the best game plan. If you saw my spreadsheets that I had here, they would just be caked full of all kinds of different data points and numbers. And so
Yeah.
what I'm just trying to do is making sure that my money is best working for me. And so
Yeah.
it's really easy to go buy a property for $35,000, have a $40,000 mortgage on it, and rent out for $800 a month. And now all of a sudden, if that house went from $60,000 to $100,000 in value because the market's changing, there's a lot of equity in there that it's not doing anything for you. The return on equity is zero. And so I want to make sure I recapture that, put it back out elsewhere. Like in this case, as a down payment towards, say, a 16-unit building versus having 3 properties with equity in it. Like I have a 16-unit building here that is highly leveraged. And when I say highly leveraged, I look at leverage as a good thing. Most people frown upon that. But to me, insurance is the first step that you can insure your properties for. Second step is getting leverage. So if you have a property that's free and clear out there, it's kind of like a sitting duck for a lawsuit. It's just asking for someone to take that money out of it. Versus if you get your money back out of the property, if I'm buying this house and I don't have any money into it, there isn't less risk there for me if in case that house got lost versus if someone else bought the same house at full market value and put 20% down payment into it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm still in the acquisition stage as well too. So again, leverage is your friend there, where you can buy 5 houses for the price of 1 free and clear property.
Yeah, no, 100%. Those are some good tips. So how has getting into real estate changed your life so far? You've had lots of big changes.
Well, obviously the biggest change is I have a lot of hobbies and I have a lot of things I love to do. And it does not include working in an office or working for someone else. So the last couple of years, I mean, it's kind of silly that in order to become financially free, you have to give up all your free time. So I was working 100-hour work weeks while I had a full-time day job to get to where I could buy enough property. But now that I've bought enough property, I'm able to travel. One of my goals was once I left my job, I was going to travel to all 50 states. And I'm sitting at about, probably about 35 to 40 right now. I have an East Coast trip planned coming up next month. And then I'm flying to Alaska the following month, which is going to be my 50th state. In the meantime, I'm also trying to travel around and start going to all the national parks. I have my little national park list probably behind me, you can see here.
Yeah.
And just trying to knock out. So I'm a very list-oriented person. So again, another one of my plans here is I want to play every single disc golf course in the state of Wisconsin, which is like 300 courses. So I'm trying to knock those out as well too. So it's really, it's allowed me to now focus my time on things that I've dreamt about before in the past.
Yeah. No, that's really cool. So if somebody's looking to get in touch with you, learn more about what you're doing, where can they find you?
My email is realestate18464@yahoo.com. And I'm on Bigger Pockets, the website. I'm on their forums. So if you want to reach out to me, it's Chris Heeren, Heeren. I get questions out there all the time, and I check it maybe once a week and get back. I make sure I get back to everyone that responds out there.
Yeah, no, that's great. Well, Chris, just want to say thanks so much for taking the time today and sharing your success with us.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate it.
It was my pleasure. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well on your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.